Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to be speaking today about the automotive supply chain and the importance of ENX VCS. With me is Willie and Suhas, and we'll have an introduction slide on them here in a little bit. The agenda we have for today is some introductions to know more about us in SGS as well as ENX. Some overview about what SGS is doing in North America and globally. The VCS scheme presentation from ENX. And we'll have a Q&A session afterwards. My name is Tyler Drenth. I lead strategic business development for mobility for the United States. I've been with SGS for about 6 months now, leading operations around strategy and business development, speaking with clients. We're joined today, as I said, by Willie Fabritas and Suhas Konanur. Willie, can you give a brief introduction to yourself?
Sure. Tyler, thank you very much. My name is Willie Fabritas, and I'm the Global Head for Strategy and Business Development and Business Assurance for SGS. And my time in the automotive industry goes back, I don't know, when God was a young man, maybe 27, 28 years ago. And it actually started with my thesis working in Germany at a stamping facility, who was and still is an supplier to major OEMs, and where I implemented a quality management system. And then later on, I moved into the tech industry as an auditor for ISO 9001 and obviously then US 9001 in South Africa. And then came to the States some 26 years ago. Again, QS 9000 and ISO TS 6949 and obviously TS 6949. But because of my educational background, which is in computer science, I then moved very, very quickly into the ISO 27K certification programs and had the privilege to audit some major cloud providers around the globe. And then I joined SGS about 3.5, 4 years ago in my current position. And I also have the privilege to sit on a couple of ISO committees, namely SC27 and SC42, which are responsible for publishing standards related to information security, as well as AI. And this week, I'm actually in Las Vegas at the CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, and I will come back to that later in a couple of minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Willie. Suhas, can we have a little bit of your background, if possible?
Yeah, thank you, Tyler. And Happy New Year to everyone assembled here. So my name is Suhas Konanur. I'm also an automotive professional. I have had a decade of very good experience in multiple roles in the automotive industry, which includes cybersecurity and passive safety. So I have an MSc in automotive engineering from RWTH Aachen in Germany, and it's also complemented by an MBA from IIM Bangalore. So currently I'm working as a program lead for vehicle cybersecurity at ENX Association, where I lead an international working group of automotive cybersecurity experts in developing and piloting ENX VCS, a standardized 21434 audit scheme for automotive suppliers. Apart from that, I also manage and coordinate the ENX VCS audit program with global audit providers, which also includes SGS. So yeah, pleased to be here at the webinar and looking forward to explaining more about ENX VCS to all of you guys.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the introduction. So as we look at vehicle cybersecurity and its importance in the industry, there's a couple things that are worth considering and mentioning. As you see on this slide, cybersecurity is no longer optional. It's essential to ensure safety and compliance and business continuity in the automotive sector. Some of the key aspects that are facing the industry that really place the importance on vehicle cybersecurity and cybersecurity as a whole are rising cyber threats. These are brought about by the increasing connectivity we see in today's vehicles, and it increases the attack surfaces that people can target. And as well as the cyber attacks on the vehicles themselves can compromise safety, privacy, and data integrity. We're also seeing an increase in regulatory pressure. Standards that are in the market, like ISO 21434, provide frameworks for product development, but we need to make sure we're ever increasing our focus on this changing threat. Increased scheme offerings like TISAX and VCS from ENX further protect consumers and manufacturers from this threat, but it changes daily, and sometimes it can change hourly. The importance of cybersecurity is also in making sure we ensure reputation and trust. Cyber incidents can lead to brand damage and a loss of customer trust. And demonstrating strong cybersecurity inside of the market actually enhances market competitiveness. Sometimes it can even be a manufacturer's necessity to have some kind of a cybersecurity protection plan in place. And there's also financial implications that come from these threats. Supporting stats, we see that there's 125 million connected cars that are expected globally by 2030. And 40% of cybersecurity incidents in 2023 target automotive systems or suppliers. We have a quick poll question for you guys. How familiar are you with the ENX VCS certification? If you have a second to answer that in the chat, we'll give a few minutes. Willie, if you'd like, we would love to hear more about what you might have heard this week at CES.
Yeah, it's all about software-defined vehicles, software-defined entertainment systems, software-defined, I don't know, something, right? And we see everything is getting connected, everything is connected, and obviously vehicles are not an exception to that. Whether these vehicles are the, let's say, traditional cars and vehicles the three of us are driving, or whether this is a skateboard or something, right? With that software and the connectivity, there come huge advantages, because obviously that means that the user is in the center, and the user has a lot of capabilities and abilities to modify and customize the vehicles and the performance of the vehicles for their particular needs. But that connectivity also obviously leads to some, let's say, challenges. And this means obviously in particular connections to the internet. And everything that is connected to the internet, by definition, is at risk of attacks. So that leads then automatically to significant challenges to protect those devices and those systems in a very systematic way. And obviously, the ISO standards and ENX VCS bring solutions to that table, making sure that the entire ecosystem is more secured. I'm not saying perfectly secured, because in cybersecurity, there is no concept of perfect security, but at the same time, it's raising the bar and ensuring a higher level of security.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really interesting to hear about that. As we see from the poll questions, we have some people that are very familiar with ENX VCS, some that are somewhat familiar, but a large majority of the audience is not familiar. And hopefully by the end of this presentation, we'll be a little bit more aware of that, and those numbers will skew a little bit more towards the other side of things. Just really quick to cover SGS in brief. We were founded in 1878. We're the world's #1 leader in testing, inspection, and certification. With over 99,000 employees, 2,700 offices, and 11 global industries. Willie, I know you're on the global team. Do you mind talking a little bit about some of the global work we're doing?
Yeah, I always, especially here at a conference like the CES, it's something like, who is SGS? And I say, well, we are testing things.
Yeah.
And then people say, things like, and I say, well, like oranges, like chips. The ones you eat and the chips that are in your cell phones. We test anything and everything you can imagine, whether this is, I don't know, the contamination of oranges by pesticides, or whether this is a chip for cybersecurity hardness, so to speak, right? SGS was originally founded as a grain, still today very heavily involved in the food safety domain. But obviously, this function we are representing is related to what we call business assurance. And business assurance, in general terms, is responsible for providing assurance services related to management systems. But there is also obviously medical devices and things like that. And part of that is also includes the automotive cybersecurity component. So we are assessing organizations on a global scale to all kinds of frameworks, whether this is ISO, whether this is TISAX, whether this is industry specifics. And if then the result of such an assessment leads to the conclusion that, yes, indeed, the organization has implemented the necessary requirements, then obviously the customer will get a certificate.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for giving that overview. As we look at that, you can see, though, the SGS difference, there's other certifying bodies out there, but talking about everything from chips in your food to chips in your cell phones, I think that's a great analogy and way to put it. We have a global network. I think that we also bring a good quality of service and industry expertise to a lot of these industries, including the automotive and transportation industry. We also have a digital innovation team, and we have a strong focus on corporate sustainability. When we look at this, as we've covered earlier, SGS is the world's leader in testing, inspection, and certification. And you can see we have over 100,000 certifications across many different industries. Today will be around cybersecurity and the automotive and transportation industry. But when we look at North America, we have a lot of the key vehicle cybersecurity standards. And there's one on there that's not vehicle cybersecurity, but closely related in ISO 26262. But TISAX, ENX VCS, 21434, and some of these other ones like 56001, Willie, where we're looking at innovation management and how it might impact some of the cybersecurity standards and how companies innovate and structure their innovation and how that changes over time. But that's for a different webinar. I think we have some recordings in the past about ISO 56001. We have another poll question for the audience. And that's, what's your company's biggest challenge regarding cybersecurity compliance? While we're doing that, Willie, you.
While waiting for the audience, maybe coming back to that previous slide in terms of all those ISO standards, yeah. I think it's very, very important to note that these standards, yes, stand alone, but cannot and must not be seen isolated by themselves, but are very much aligned with each other. So if an organization is already certified to, let's say, ISO 9001, for example, getting certified to 27001 or 42001 is really not that difficult, because all of those standards are actually structured in a very, very same way. And that's by intent. It's based on the ISO instructions. The high-level structure of ISO standards for management systems is always the same. There's always context of the organization, risk assessment, responsibility of management, improvement, right? And then obviously, Tyler showed already 56001 and 42001. Just for the benefit of the audience, 56001 is about innovation management. So here the question is, how does an organization institute a disciplined approach to innovation management? And 42001 is also a relatively new standard published about a year and a half ago, which is addressing the management of AI systems. So I think we have the results of the poll question, right, Tyler?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it seems that a lot of the responses are the challenges come from understanding regulatory requirements, implementing some technical measures, and budget and resources. It's good to see that nobody's struggling to find a certifying body. Hopefully that means that they found us, and that's why they're all here. But I digress. We're going to lead now into a little bit more of our introduction to our partner here with ENX. The increasing digitization of vehicle systems requires enhanced cybersecurity to maintain product quality and customer trust. The ENX VCS standard is a global certification for addressing automotive supply chain cybersecurity challenges. The ENX VCS vehicle cybersecurity management system audit provides the automotive industry with a uniform road vehicle cybersecurity standard for suppliers. We invite Suhas now to kind of give us a breakdown of the scheme of what ENX VCS entails. Suhas?
Thank you, Tyler, for the small introduction. So let me take over. Before I go into the actual topic, I'd like to say a few words about the association itself, the organization where I work for. So ENX Association, we were founded in the year 2000. So we are a non-profit French association governed by French law. But we are essentially based in Frankfurt, Germany. And we have been operating successfully for 25 years as a non-profit. So essentially, we don't have any intention to realize profits. And it was also founded primarily by the VDA, the German Association of the Automotive Industry, and also Gallia, the French association, which represents the French automotive industry. So we have a board consisting of member companies listed above. The top automotive OEMs as well as suppliers are represented here. And we also have a presidium, which is also consisting of the president, who comes from Renault, the vice president, who comes from BMW, and also the treasurer, who comes from the French association, Gallia. As you can see, even though we are a non-profit, we are pretty much financially stable. And the reason is that we have stable running revenues coming from ENX network and TISAX, which we have successfully scaled onto an international level. So this enables us to have positive figures on our balance sheets and engage ourselves in various activities and initiate further new programs, for example, ENX VCS. And why do we do this? Because our aim is that we want to enable trustworthy cooperation between different stakeholders of the automotive industry. So through ENX VCS, we are trying to push the boundaries and ensure that this cooperation extends not only to secure communication through ENX network or ensuring secure supply chains in the industry through TISAX, but also engaging on the product level to ensure that you have a secure cybersecurity management system which enables you to build safe and secure products for the vehicle. So how are we achieving this? We are achieving this through various working groups. We have the working group VCS, about which I'll be speaking about shortly, the working group ESA, which is responsible for managing TISAX, and also the working group TISAX assessment, which is the consortium of various audit providers who help manage TISAX and who provide TISAX services. So why do we need cybersecurity? I think Tyler already briefly spoke about these points, but I'm just going to go a little deeper from the perspective of vehicle cybersecurity. So inside the vehicle, you have various vehicle systems which are now going into the realm of automated driving. They are increasingly connected to not only themselves, but also with the corresponding vehicle infrastructure. And you have new mobility concepts. So all of these provide for increased number of attack surfaces and threats. So looking at all these things into consideration, the UNEC, the R155, it really mandates OEMs to provide proof that you have a functioning cybersecurity management system in your organization, which can ensure holistic cybersecurity in the way you build your vehicle. So how do the OEMs prove that? The OEMs prove that by getting a certificate of compliance, that is the COC, furnished to them. However, there's a catch. The UNR 155, chapter 7.225, it says, look, you need to manage your own organization, but also you need to manage the supply dependencies because 75 to 80% of the value addition comes from the supply chain. So essentially what happens is the OEM cascades his cybersecurity requirements onto the supplier, and then the supplier is then demonstrated to provide proof that even he is complying in delivering safe and secure products to the OEM. But we all know that the supply chain involved in building up a vehicle is enormous, and it's also staggeringly complex. We have system suppliers, both the hardware and software type. We have a lot of third-party component suppliers, people who deliver off-the-shelf components. We have engineering service providers. So all of them form part of this supply chain matrix. So when you have an increased landscape of threat and damage scenarios due to vehicle digitalization, all these risks should be managed not only by the OEM but also through the supply chain. So increasingly, OEMs and even system suppliers, that is the tier 1 suppliers, they are realizing and they're requiring that suppliers down the supply chain also have a functioning CSMS, and that they provide proof of a working CSMS through a CSMS audit. So that is where ENX VCS comes forward, because we try to ensure that there is a harmonized and a standardized ISO SAE 21434 audit standard being offered, which is of great benefit to the industry as a whole. Now, you might be wondering, what is this 21434? So let me just take a quick detour. I just spoke about the regulation, the UNR 155, and the software update regulation, the 156, which mandates vehicles manufacturers to provide secure cars and also ensure functioning updates or secure updates. But it needs to be implemented in a standardized format, and hence you have a cybersecurity engineering standard, the 21434, which gives the technical framework and provides a set of requirements as to how automotive manufacturers and their suppliers can conform to engineering safe and secure products and vehicles. However, there's a gap. So you have an audit scheme or an audit reference guideline, the 5112, which says how you can perform audits as a first-party audit, as a second-party audit, or as a third-party audit. But there was still a gap. You need to take the audit guideline and you need to implement it in the form of individual audit schemes, which can then audit the supplier in an efficient and effective fashion. So that's the reason why ENX VCS was implemented as per the international publicly available specification, the 5112, and we have vehicle cybersecurity management audit, which is exclusively aimed at automotive suppliers. Moreover, we have suppliers who will also benefit from the existing ENX governance framework, which is already being used for other services from our side, like TISAX. Also, 6 of the world's leading audit providers are ready to carry out ENX VCS audits. So who can be audited using ENX VCS audit? So if you think you have a vehicle cybersecurity management system and you want it audited, so you might belong to either of these categories. So you are a tier 1 system supplier of embedded systems, you're a hardware component supplier, you are a software component supplier, or you could be an engineering service provider who provides solutions based on requirements provided by the customer. You could be a software and information communication infrastructure provider, or you could be an OEM who would like to use ENX VCS for performing self-assessments and realizing where do you stand or where does your CSMS stand. You might be asking, okay, the 21434 is pretty, it's been there for quite some time. It's been there since 2021, and you have a number of audit schemes already running in the market. So why do we need ENX VCS? The reason is that the current market situation is pretty chaotic. I mean, I would literally frame it as an audit salad bowl with a lot of proprietary schemes. The point is, the scheme itself is a kind of black box, because there are different schemes currently in the market which have been packaged as either a process audit accredited as per the 17065, as an inspection audit as per the 17020, or it could be a management system audit as per the 17021. The validities of these different schemes vary from 1 to 5 years depending on who is offering the scheme. So if you are a supplier, the ordering is not really transparent. Now, if you're an OEM, you have a different problem. You have multiple suppliers come to you and say, okay, I've got my 21434 certificate done and I'm issuing my certificate. Now, as someone who needs to verify each and every certificate scheme, it's a huge headache for me because I need to verify what is the audit scope, what is the audit methodology, and what is the audit criteria. Verify that the correct accreditation type is used, and I simply cannot compare the different supply certificates because of the differing scopes and the methodologies. So this increases a lot of due diligence work for me as an OEM, and it kind of increases operational cost and uncertainty as well. So that's the reason we are here, because as I mentioned in the previous slide, we try to reduce all this by offering a standardized and harmonized 21434 audit standard, which can help resolve this problem. And the governance framework. So it's not like I just create the scheme and I go to sleep over it. No. We have 6 audit providers, as I already mentioned, who are ready to conduct the audit and kind of create results for it. So we are also tasked with managing the audit providers. We accompany the audit providers on witness assessments to see whether the ENX VCS audit methodology is followed to the letter. And to manage the audit providers, we have an extensive audit provider criteria and assessment requirements document. So we constantly upkeep these documents and ensure that the audits are performed as per these criteria. Moreover, the audit criteria catalog, that itself is managed and it is kept up to date by a working group of OEMs, suppliers, and service providers with whom we are in constant touch to improve the audit control catalog. And ultimately, once the results are generated, it needs to we need to have proper exchange mechanisms to ensure that you, as the business partner, you can order audits from different audit providers, and then you can provide evidence to your customer about this. So all of this can be achieved under the umbrella framework that the ENX Association offers through its governance framework. Moreover, as I already mentioned, we are very focused on whom we want to address with the audit scheme. We are not aiming the scheme at OEMs. We are not aiming at process audits or at product conformity audits. Our focus positioning is very clear. We are aiming at providing third-party audits of vehicle cybersecurity management system aimed at the suppliers. Because as far as the OEMs are concerned, they already have compliance to the UN 155 and they achieve their certificate of compliance. If you want to undergo a second-party audit and you want to undergo a process audit, you can go for an ASPICE audit, which is upcoming in the year 2025. Or if you want to go for a product conformity audit, as it's normally necessary for OEMs, they can go for a vehicle type approval, again, as per the 155. So our focus positioning is very clear. We are aiming at suppliers and we are aiming at CSMS audits. So what are the benefits? As you might have already realized, we are aiming at providing the automotive community with a universal standard for third-party VCSMS certifications. Through this, we hope to avoid the growing jungle or salad bowl of proprietary schemes by various certification bodies and ensure that the path for the future is harmonized and smooth. There are benefits for all stakeholders involved. Suppliers need not go for redundant, costly, and complex second-party audits from each and every OEM who comes knocking at the doors. And the vehicle manufacturers need not waste unnecessary resources performing due diligence to realize which audit scheme is good and which is not. So we have a cream on the pudding. So since we are in the introduction phase, we launched the ENX VCS scheme in 6 months ago. So for the initial phase, our registration is free of charge, so you need not pay any fees for this. So who maintains the scheme? We don't do it alone. We don't work in a silo. We have an international working group consisting of different members. We have OEMs, we have suppliers, and we also have engineering service providers, so that the different viewpoints of all supplier categories are included in the way we have structured this document. We also have a new member, Hyundai Mobis, from Asia. That means our members are also international. We are not just Germany or France or Europe centric. We are also having increasingly attention from our Asian stakeholders as well. So together with this group, we first created the audit scheme. We piloted this scheme to verify whether it's feasible or not. And once we realized that it's feasible, the project group transformed itself into a working group, and now we are working on continuously improving and maintaining the audit scheme. And as I already mentioned, it's globally available. As I already mentioned, 6 audit providers, including SGS, are there to support us in our journey. And we have a strict evaluation scheme by which we constantly manage the performance of each and every audit provider, and whether they have qualified auditors who can go out there and do the work as per the ENX VCS mandate. So I just like to give you a few data points from our piloting experience. So we had early adopters or audit participants from Europe and Asia. So we had 5 audit providers who said, hey, let's go out and give ENX VCS a shot. So across 65 plus auditor days, we conducted a lot of audits for 7 companies, and we had generated 110 findings. So that gave us a lot of confidence and told us that we were in the right direction as far as the audit scheme is concerned. And people who underwent the audits and people who conducted the audits gave us a lot of testimonials. We have companies AVL, ZF, G&D, Costal, and also Hyundai Mobis, who really had the courage to jump onto the ENX VCS bandwagon and undergo audits. And what are they actually saying? So for example, we have an expert at a large supplier who said that it's one of the most comprehensive audits, and the outcome was really correct and helpful. That means it's not just for the compliance reason, but it really helped them in getting the processes in order and keeping things running for the foreseeable future. Even the auditors have said that the catalog which they used for performing the audit was like really structured, streamlined, and easier to understand than even the underlying 21434 standard. There was also an auditor who performed an audit for an out-of-context supplier, and he said this catalog is flexible enough to not only audit system suppliers, but also other chip cybersecurity requirements from other industries which are not specifically automotive. And we also got a good review from a technical service provider who does homologation audits, 155 audits, and he said that this audit might be restricted to supplier companies, but if we are doing a 155 COC audit for an OEM, we can definitely use ENX VCS supply audit as evidence for performing a 155 COC audit for an OEM. So I think these testimonials are kind of proof that the feasibility has run well, and this gave us the courage to go for the launch. So what are the different security areas that we are covering? It covers the entire gamut of fields that is recommended in the 21434, as well as those areas which are necessary for auditing a management system audit. So you have the organizational cybersecurity. We look into cybersecurity culture as defined by human resources. We look into risk management as exemplified by the TARA processes in the 21434. We look at internal assessments because the proof of the pudding is the eating. Are you able to control your different product portfolios? Are you following the right processes? Are you conducting internal audits to ensure that these are looked at in a regular fashion? And then, of course, the entire V model, the concept and product development phase, the post-development phase, and once the product is out in the field, operations security, and then last but not the least, you have suppliers under you. How are you managing your supply chain relationships? So all these security areas cover the entire ambit of the VCS audit scheme. So we had the confidence, okay, our piloting exercise was a really good success. So 6 months ago, we took the decision to launch our product. So you can go to the ENX Association website, and there you find ENX VCS, where you can, get much more information, register yourself, create scopes, and get ready for the audit. So for those who are not really familiar with TISAX or even ENX VCS, this is a short description of how the life cycle runs for you guys. So essentially what do? You go in, you register yourself, you register your organization, you create the scope of your audit. And once you create the scope, once your scope is approved and registered, then you select one of the 6 audit providers that we already have in the market. You have already set, and you can do a self-assessment. Once you realize that you tick most of the boxes and you're pretty mature, you can then be ready for the VCS audit. Your designated audit provider comes to you. He carries out the initial audit. So once the initial audit is performed, if you have already passed the audit, congratulations. Else, you might have a list of corrective actions which you need to perform. The audit provider comes back and he checks if your corrections are done. Once they are all done, to multiple iterations if necessary, you get a report saying that you have passed the audit. The result is then entered in the database and you get a label. You have your customer who can also log into the ENX VCS database, and then he is in a position to see your audit results. So this is, in short, the life cycle of the ENX VCS audit scheme. As I already mentioned, in the website, you get a lot of information. You have the downloads where you get the criteria catalog filled with various requirements. We can measure yourself up to these requirements and check if your organization is ready for getting into ENX VCS audits. As I said earlier, this audit scheme is essentially an implementation of the ISO PS 5112. So we have essentially mapped questions from our audit scheme together with the guideline 5112, so that you know that we are completely in line with the 21434 standard as well as the 5112 audit guideline. And if you have questions, you can just go into our FAQ page. We essentially answer the most general questions, and we answer questions on how to register, what can you expect during the audit phase, and once the audit is performed, how are the results going to be exchanged going forward. So just to give a short recap, it's also, what is ENX VCS? It is a VCSMS audit. It is nothing different from a 21434 audit, but it's a global and harmonized 21434 audit standard aiming at the automotive suppliers who are relevant for the cybersecurity of road vehicles. So it is an audit scheme for VCSMS, just to make it very clear. And the advantage is that business users who go through the ENX VCS audit scheme will benefit massively from the governance framework, which has been successfully used for TISAX. And we hope that through this universalization, it ensures standardization, quality, and comparable audit results, which is of benefit to OEMs as well as suppliers. So that's from my side as far as a high-level overview about ENX VCS is concerned. I can still go into the details, but I would just like to ask SGS, how are we running on the time side?
Time-wise, we are just perfect.
Okay.
So we still have enough time. But I also would like to ask the audience to think about questions, because obviously a webinar like this one should be interactive. So if somebody in the audience has questions, please feel free to put them into the Q&A, and we will be more than happy to address those. Thank you. But otherwise, Duas, please go ahead and provide more details if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Thank you, Willie. So some of you might be wondering, okay, you register for the audit. So what exactly is the scope of the audit? So the audit scope, it essentially covers all the parts of the organization that you think is responsible for providing secure products for the vehicle. So if you create the audit scope, it essentially helps the audit team to know where to start and where to stop. And it also helps them to plan the audit from a budgetary proposition as well as from a technical viewpoint. One thing to note is that your audit scope could be smaller than the scope of the VCSMS of your organization, because it could always be a case where there are certain aspects of your CSMS which need not be mature or need not stand up to the rigors of an audit, and hence you might deliberately create an audit scope which is slightly smaller than the master VCSMS at your organization. So this also has a bearing on the audit objectives, which you might include as part of your audit scope. So this audit scope will essentially check whether you have all your processes, procedures, and resources under the responsibility of your organization, which is responsible for the security of the products and protection goals defined in the selected VCS audit objectives for all the locations that you have under your audit scheme, or under your audit scope. So, and all these processes, procedures will then be subject to an audit, and the audit criteria listed in these audit objectives will be used to evaluate the audit scope. So essentially the heart of the audit scope are the audit objectives. So based on your profile, that means what are the relevant stages of the product lifecycle that you are involved in. So you might be involved in development activities, you might be involved in production activities for your customer, or you might be involved in helping the customer ensure a safe and secure vehicle by engaging in operations and maintenance activities once the vehicle is out in the field. So depending on the different stages of the product lifecycle you are involved in, you can select the relevant audit objectives when you create the audit scope. So once you have selected these audit objectives, then you're mostly ready to go for the you can see in the last column, we have ensured that all these audit objectives are also mapped to the relevant chapters of the 21434. So essentially nothing is missed. And of course, the most important thing is the audit criteria catalog, because once you are ready for the audit, you need to check yourself with respect to the various questions and requirements and see the cybersecurity requirements needed for a management system. All the requirements of this catalog we have out, and we have mapped it to the relevant control questions. And all of these are traceable to the ISO SAE 21434, as well as to the Annex SL of the ISO IEC management directives. It's a very proven format. If any of you are already familiar with TISAX, you would know that the audit criteria catalog essentially mirrors the same structure and format as the ISA catalog for TISAX. So it's much less of a pain to understand how the catalog is structured and how it functions. So essentially we have 9 chapters. We have 9 chapters, we have 24 control questions, and we have more than 100 requirements which help to evaluate whether your CSMS is, really doing what it should be doing. Depending on the audit objectives you have selected for the scope, whether it be development or production or operations, or maybe a combination of all of them, you can map them to the relevant chapters in the audit criteria catalog. And depending on the different audit objectives you're selecting for the audit, you also get issued the corresponding labels once your audit is completed. So you get a clear idea of the different control questions and chapters that are relevant for your audit objectives and the ones which are not relevant. So you can accordingly prepare for the audit. So in the definition of the audit scope, I mentioned a term which is VCS protection objects and protection goals. So what are protection objects? Essentially, those are the items and components which consist of assets with cybersecurity properties, the very famous confidentiality, integrity, and availability, and also other auxiliary cybersecurity properties, namely authenticity, authorization, and non-repudiation. So the goal of the audit is to ensure that you secure these protection objects against various cyber threat scenarios which are relevant for road vehicles. And all these cyber threat scenarios and the processes and the policies needed to safeguard the same are captured under the VCS audit objectives in the control catalog. So you satisfy the audit objectives. It provides proof that you have a well-established CSMS, which provides a high degree of assurance regarding the security of the protection objects. Some of you might be having a questions. Okay, is TISAX a prerequisite for ENX VCS? Definitely. And I will answer it in a very simple fashion. TISAX provides assurance that you have a secure organization which can provide information and cybersecurity across all aspects of the organizational workflows and processes. Now, a subset of these organizational processes or organizational responsibilities is to securely develop, manufacture, or operate vehicle products flowing into the vehicle. So now, it is obviously you cannot securely develop, manufacture, or operate your vehicle products unless there is an super environment which is like, secure, which kind of provides you the foundation to do your secure development and manufacturing and operation of vehicle products. So that's the reason why we say that having a TISAX label in all your CSMS specific locations is a prerequisite in order to go for ENX VCS and obtain ENX VCS labels as well. Because ultimately, an established ISMS and CSMS in an integrated fashion is proof that you have an holistic and integrated automotive cybersecurity frameworks. For those who AL2 or an AL3 label, it really doesn't matter, because whether you have an AL2 or AL3 label, as far as the ENX VCS locations are concerned, if they already have an AL2 or AL3 label, we recognize them equally, and that provides that kind of ticks all the boxes which is necessary to, pass the VCS audit. You might be asking, okay.
There's also a question that says, and I read, how much of the VCS audit addresses TISAX for a steel manufacturing supplier to the auto industry?
The VCS audit does not address TISAX. So this is one thing that needs to be made clear. So TISAX, or the information security audit, is aimed at the enterprise, where the object of protection is actually all the information processes and workflows which happen at all levels of the enterprise. So for example, if you're a steel manufacturing supplier, how are you addressing information flows concerning steel manufacturing, concerning your supply chain, concerning how you interact with your customer? So that is what is considered under TISAX. VCS is it's much more. It's a subset of operations, because here in VCS we are looking at how you are providing products which are relevant to the cybersecurity of the vehicle. So if you're providing products or services which are cybersecurity relevant, then you automatically come under the ENX VCS ambit. However, if you're providing products or services which are not really relevant for cybersecurity of the vehicles, then ENX VCS is not really your ball game. I hope that answers your question.
I think in other words, a steel manufacturer would just manufacture steel, but the steel is going into the body of the car, maybe into some components within the gearboxes and engines, but that steel has no connectivity, has no connection to the entertainment system, to the internet, and therefore is not part of VCS.
Yeah, that's right.
We also do have another question, and this is, and once again, I read and I quote, is VCS audit mandatory for all tier 1 or tier 2 suppliers of those group car OEMs? So I restate the question, and I hope I formulated it correctly. Is VCS audit mandatory for all tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers to those OEMs subscribing to the system? Thank you.
No. Similar to TISAX, ENX VCS is not mandatory. So essentially, OEMs or customers, they look at the value addition that ENX VCS is providing, and on that basis, some of them are already accepting the ENX VCS results from our pilot runs, and some of them are also asking them in the RFQ documents. But going back to your question, is it mandatory? No. ENX VCS does not operate on a legal framework like the 155. As we already mentioned in one of the beginning slides, the UNR 155 asks for OEMs to manage their supply chain dependencies. And we strongly believe that suppliers in the supply chain undergoing ENX VCS audits and providing proof of having a established CSMS is the best way of providing evidence to various OEMs and car manufacturers that you are on the right track. So it's not mandatory, but it is definitely recommended, because our aim is to scale it up and make it really the international universal standard for auditing supplier organizations who are responsible for providing secure products for the vehicle.
Thank you for that, Suhas.
Thank you so much, Tyler. Do you see any questions in the Q&A?
Yeah, I think there's a couple other ones. What are the main challenges that companies are going to face during an ENX VCS certification process?
The main challenge is simple. You first need to exactly understand the scope of the audit. That means you need to understand what are the different departments, different business units, which are part of the audit scope. So you need to kind of have a good understanding of your audit scope, the different departments and the different business units which are part of it. And then you also need to kind of select the audit objectives. So you might be knowing what are the different vehicle life cycle stages that you are part of when you're providing value-added services to your customer, whether you are in development, production, or whether you're helping the customer after SOP and once the vehicle is in the field. So basically, you need to select your audit objectives corresponding to the audit scope. And once you have done that, you then go to the audit catalog. You can look at all the different control questions with the specific cybersecurity requirements for your management system audit. Map the same to the selected audit objectives that you already have selected in the audit scope, and then prepare for the audit. That means you undergo a self-assessment. You see how well you stand in your self-assessment, and once you think that you have a reasonable amount of confidence in your capabilities, then you can order an ENX VCS audit from any of the approved audit providers that we have. So I think these are the challenges that you need to kind of take into account when you prepare for an ENX VCS audit.
Awesome. Thank you. And there was another one. How does an ENX VCS certification help automotive suppliers comply with R155? I know we've talked about the linkage between the two a little bit, but does an ENX VCS certification help some of the prerequisites for R155?
Yeah. So let me take a use case. So I'm an OEM. I'm undergoing a COC audit or even a type approval audit. A type approval being a particular car portfolio which I would like to be verified as being secure and being allowed to go on the road. So if I'm undergoing a COC or a type approval audit, one of the questions that the auditor is going to be asking me is, how do you ensure that the 100 suppliers who provide parts to you also have things under control? So if you as if a supplier already has an ENX VCS audit, he can then just furnish proof of having successfully completed the ENX VCS audits for the necessary audit objectives, and a collection of all these audit objectives, collection of all these certificates helps the OEM to ensure that he is in sync with the requirements elucidated by the UNR 155. So the supplier is indirectly helping the OEM to stay compliant with the 155 and obtain a certificate of compliance, or on the other hand, at the product level, he is able to achieve a vehicle type approval.
Awesome, thank you. One more question that came in. Does an ENX VCS certification benefit small and medium-sized enterprises?
Absolutely. It is a one-size-fits-all audit scheme that we have, and it is aimed at all the suppliers. So if I go by the 21434 terminology, we are having in-context suppliers, that is OEMs who get the requirements directly from the customers. You have out-of-context suppliers who deliver products to the customer, but they don't know where exactly the products are going to flow in. Or you could be a supplier who is remotely responsible to the automotive industry, and all these supplier categories are definitely covered under the ambit of the ENX VCS. Also, the size really doesn't matter, whether you are a giant system supplier with operations across geographies, or whether you are a small company with just 50 employees, but you're providing some development solutions for the customer. The catalog adapts itself to the various categories of suppliers. And this is possible because if you, I don't have a snapshot of the details of the catalog, but if you look into the catalog, the requirements are categorized into must and should requirements. That means there are certain requirements where you can provide a justification if these requirements are not applicable to you. So if you're a small supplier where you can provide a justification that these requirements are not applicable and the audit team is happy with it, then you can really have a really flexible audit by looking at the catalog, and you can pass the audit regardless of the size of your company. So definitely ENX VCS audit scheme is aimed at small and medium enterprises as well.
Awesome, thank you. I think we've got a few more slides to go. To be respectful of everybody's time, I think if you want to wrap up anything that's on this slide, and then we'll probably move towards the end then for just closing remarks if possible.
Yeah. So locations are not really important. I mean, if someone's coming from the TISAX world, locations, like, they are really the prime factor for performing the audits. But in VCS, they have limited relevance. The reason is being none of your locations are coupled to the audit objectives. However, locations are kind of a placeholder. So how do the locations help you? Say you're a small organization or a medium-sized organization, and you have 3 locations which undergoes an ENX VCS audit. You then categorize your location A as the main location because it might host your R&D headquarters, and it might host your CSMS compliance team. So the audit is performed on-site at this particular location A, and then visits to the locations B and C is not really mandatory. personnel from locations B and C can participate either at location A or they can participate remotely. And then the results are then just uploaded into the database. So why do we need these locations ABC? Locations ABC help, say, the procurement department of your customer to understand which locations exactly come under the scope of the audit. So it's just a kind of guideline for the procurement guys. And to some extent, it helps the audit providers and the audit team to budget for the audit effort and also to help plan their audit itinerary. Otherwise, it's just a placeholder for those who might have questions related to locations. I think we are running out of time. So yeah, I'm kind of done with my presentation here. So back to you, Tyler.
Awesome. Thank you. Daryl, we'll go chronologically. So, and just so everybody is aware, a recording will be sent out as well as this presentation deck. I think we have one poll question. Is anybody, is your organization currently pursuing any cybersecurity certifications? If you don't mind just answering that really quickly in the poll as we wrap up the rest of this presentation. We appreciate the time that ENX has given us today. Thank you, Suhas, for coming in and the wealth of knowledge that you've kind of bestowed upon everybody. Willie, I want to thank you as well for your time. I know that you're busy at CES and you've had a long week, but I really appreciate you coming here and speaking more about what's happened kind of globally. As we get a few answers coming in here. It looks that many are actually actively pursuing cybersecurity certifications and some are considering it. We hope that this webinar has helped enhance some of the knowledge and understanding around these cybersecurity certifications, specifically ENX VCS, as well as the right markets for it. We have a YouTube channel with a lot of content on there, including webinars, some of our live recordings and live events, weekly uploads, and industry-specific playlists that might focus on the automotive industry or on automotive suppliers, as well as on cybersecurity. Please feel free to subscribe to us on that YouTube channel for more information. And we appreciate all of your time and for everybody who tuned in. You'll see there my email is linked as well as Willie's. Suhas, if we get any questions that are specific for ENX, we'll make sure to forward those over to you guys, as well as all of our social media networks that are there on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And I think we have one more chat that might have come in, or one more question that might have come in. Suhas, I'll read this as it comes in. It says, in addition, do you provide consultancy or engineering services to help those who might have failed meeting some criteria during a VCS audit?
No, ENX is a trust anchor, and we are scheme owners. So the kind of activities that you have just suggested in your question do not fall under the ambit of ENX, unfortunately.
Understood.
From an
there are
SCS perspective, it's exactly the same. We cannot do any consulting or implementation guidance because obviously as an assessment provider, that would be a conflict of interest. So also from the SGS side, nope, sorry, can't help you with regard to engineering services or consultancy.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification. If there's no other questions, I think we'll wrap it there. Thank you again, Suhas, and thank you again, Willie, for your guys' time.
Glad to help.
Thank you.
Thank you
to everyone, and cheers, and bye-bye. Take care.